Populism, cosmopolitanism. You hear these words thrown around all the time, right? And usually they're painted as total opposites, like mortal enemies in the political arena. One side champions the people, and the other calls itself a citizen of the world. But what if that whole story, that entire conflict, isn't quite right? What if there's a hidden connection? Let's dig in.
And yeah, on the surface, you can totally see why they look like they're at war. Populism is laser-focused on the people. It's local, it's about defending your own, and its main enemy is always a corrupt, out-of-touch elite. Cosmopolitanism, on the other hand, is looking up at the horizon. It's all about the world, thinking on a global scale and feeling a sense of loyalty that goes way beyond national borders. One is about digging your heels in, the other is about spreading your wings. And this brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about today. What if this entire setup, this populism versus cosmopolitanism cage match, what if it's a false choice? What if the reality is way more complicated and, maybe even a little more hopeful? Now, to get there, we first have to understand why they seem so opposed in the first place. I mean, the tension is definitely real, and it goes way back, with deep roots in history and philosophy. So let's start by breaking each of these ideas down one at a time. All right, first up, populism. Now, this word gets tossed around like crazy, right? And a lot of the time, it's not a compliment. But if we really want to understand it, we've got to look past the specific politicians or parties and get to its core logic. What is the actual populist playbook? So let's turn to an expert. Political scientist Kaz Mudde has this really useful definition. He calls populism a thin-centered ideology. Now, what does that mean? It means it doesn't have a whole lot of its own substance. It can attach itself to left-wing ideas or right-wing ideas. At its absolute core, it's just this one simple structure, a moral showdown between the pure people and the corrupt elite. And this leads us to a really crucial distinction. See, populism's main fight is vertical. It's the people down here versus the elites up there. But that conflict can very easily get twisted sideways and become horizontal. Suddenly, it's not about the people versus the powerful anymore. It's about the people versus the outsiders. Immigrants, minorities, anyone who gets labeled as not part of the pure group. And that shift, that's everything. When a populist movement stops defining itself just against the powerful and starts punching down, targeting the vulnerable, the so-called outsiders, that's the moment it turns exclusionary, nativist, and you guessed it, deeply anti-cosmopolitan.
Okay, so that's the populist playbook. Now let's flip the coin and look at cosmopolitanism. Because it turns out its origins are actually pretty explicitly anti-popular. It was literally born from the idea of rejecting belonging to any specific group of people.
Yeah, the whole thing kicks off with maybe one of the greatest comebacks in ancient history. You've got this Greek philosopher, Diogenes the Cynic, and someone asks him where he's from. His answer? I am a cosmopolitus, a citizen of the cosmos, a citizen of the world. Now, you really have to get how absolutely shocking this was back then. For an ancient Greek, your entire identity was tied up in your city, your polis. So by rejecting that, Diogenes was basically throwing out the most fundamental building block of political life. He was saying, nope, my only loyalty is to the universal order of the cosmos. He was, in a very real way, rejecting the very idea of identifying with one particular people. And from that one idea, you can kind of see three main flavors of cosmopolitanism that have developed over time. First, there's the exilic kind. Think of the Davos man, the global elite jetting between conferences. But also think of a stateless refugee. They're both outside of traditional politics. Then there's the ethical kind. This is a personal moral code, a belief in universal human rights that you hold above your loyalty to any one country. And finally, there's the utopian vision, the really big, ambitious dream of a single world government. So here's where we land. We've got this core tension. Populism seems to suffer from an excess of political identification. It's so focused on the people that it can become exclusionary. Cosmopolitanism, on the other hand, seems to suffer from a resistance to it, born from this idea of rejecting the local. It's like they're just pulling in completely opposite directions. Okay, but this is where things get really interesting. We've laid out the conflict, we see the opposition, but now we're going to go looking for an unlikely alliance. We're going to search for that hidden common ground between these two ideas that seem like they have nothing in common. So this brings us right back to that big question, but now we've got all this context. Can a movement be genuinely populist, truly standing up for the people, and at the exact same time be cosmopolitan, radically inclusive, universal, and open to the world? Well, believe it or not, the answer might be hiding in plain sight, in a hidden history of movements that managed to be both. These were popular struggles, for sure, but they completely defied that narrow exclusionary playbook and instead embraced a kind of cosmopolitanism from below. If you look closely, you can see this amazing thread running through history. Let's call it plebeian politics. It goes from the ancient Roman populardes, who fought to expand citizenship, all the way to the Haitian revolutionaries, who declared support of Europeans to be black just to include them in their new community, and right up to modern movements like Occupy. So what's the common denominator here? What ties all these different movements together? Well, for them, the enemy is always the oppressor, not the outsider. They're all about building solidarity across borders. And they're radically inclusionary, because their ultimate goal is to tear down the very idea of exclusion itself. And that brings us to a really powerful recent example that you'll probably recognize. Just think about that slogan, "We are the 99%. It does the classic populist thing, right? It takes a part of the people, the everyday folks, and says, "We are the whole." But who are the people in that slogan? It's not a national group. It's a global 99% against a global 1%. It's populist and it's totally cosmopolitan. So, where does all this leave us? I mean, what's the takeaway here? How can we use this to think about these concepts in a way that's actually useful? It's all about finding a better path forward. Maybe the best way to think about it is that both of these ideas have like a good side and a dark side. The malignant, unhealthy form of populism is exclusionary and xenophobic. The malignant form of cosmopolitanism is elitist and totally disconnected from regular people. But their benign, healthy forms, they're incredibly powerful. An inclusive populism and a popular cosmopolitanism. So here's the big takeaway. Instead of seeing them as enemies, maybe we should see them as necessary checks on each other. A healthy dose of populism can keep cosmopolitanism from just floating away into some abstract, elitist cloud. It keeps it grounded. And a dose of cosmopolitanism can keep populism from collapsing into ugly nationalism. It keeps it open. It's almost like they need each other to stay healthy. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. The real goal isn't to pick a side. The real challenge is to figure out how to fuse their best qualities together. How can we build a politics that is genuinely for the people and at the very same time is for everyone?